A huge posse of Japanese tourists on a jaunt through Africa. Well, not quite. The Africans, people and animals, are the ones who are far away from home. For this is Japan. People the world over hanker for the mystery and danger of the dark continent, and zoos have set themselves the task of providing a touch of Africa. When you think about it, that tiger's no more out of place than all the other animals round here, all part of the performance. It was in England that the whole strange safari park business started, as a way to attract more people to some of the more commercially minded stately homes, like Woburn Abbey.
There are safari parks all over the world now. I suppose you can think of them as a logical extension of open-plan zoos, with fewer species in bigger cages.
They're popular too. People are prepared to file past a group of sleepy lions, much as they might in Africa. The park gives them an illusion of Africa, though it isn't a very good one. For one thing, the roads are too good, and for another, there are fences all over the place. What's more, when the last tourist has left Woburn Wild Animal Kingdom, the lions are locked up for the night. Another lion, another park gate. This one, though, is a little closer to the real thing, Africa. Nairobi National Park is just 4 miles from the center of Kenya's capital. Beyond the giraffes, skyscrapers, some of them built to house the tourists. Nearly 500,000 visited in 1982, spending almost £100 million. They can see most of the familiar African animals, but not elephants. The park's too small for them, and they'd be a menace if they strayed into the surrounding suburbs. Nairobi Park is most people's first taste of safari, but it's quite heavily managed to make sure plenty of animals can survive in an area just 25 by 5 kilometers. So it poses questions. Just how free and wild is the game in Kenya's game parks? Are they more than big animal drive-ins? It's too easy to stick your head in the sand and ignore these issues. So I'm going to take you on a safari that will give you a look at the game of Africa. For over 95% of the visitors, that is the African experience. Tribal dancers welcome the tourists who've gathered at the way station for perhaps the most famous safari spot in Kenya, treetops. A bus takes them the rest of the way and delivers them to their first bit of African magic, a genuine white hunter, there to warn us about the real and imagined dangers of the bush.
Before we move, let me explain few points very important for you. The first point is about baboons. Normally they come during and after the tea. If they come, please don't touch them and don't feed them because they can bite. Now you have to walk only for 200 meters. Don't stop in the way because nobody knows what's happened with the animals. All right, let's go now. Follow me.
Walking in the bush can be a bit dodgy, and the hunter does occasionally have to shoot at a wayward buffalo. But apart from that, what a welcome. If that doesn't make you think you've finally arrived in wild Africa, nothing will. A giant treehouse, home each night to about 80 visitors. It's a hotel on stilts, where English tea and cakes are served on the balcony while you watch the wildlife at the waterhole below. Warthogs enjoying the mud as we enjoy our cuppa, and grubbing around on their knees for food. And, of course, the beasts we were warned about, the baboons. They sit around up here as if they own the place, which is fair enough, as they live here and we're just passing through. They steal cakes from the unwary, and they scour the rubbish for titbits. A nuisance, but an entertaining nuisance.
Picture that.
The management could easily keep them at bay with sticks and threats backed by an occasional bullet. They do elsewhere. But baboons, wild animals an arm's length away, are a part of treetops, and the visitors, though cautious, lap it up. Encouraging the baboons to visit isn't the only way they ensure a memorable experience. That white stuff is salt, rare in the wild and irresistible to grazers. The management scatters a couple of buckets each week to attract the animals. Never mind that it kills the plant cover which keeps shyer species away. But the main attraction is the waterhole, and when the level gets low, as it is now, it'll be topped up through irrigation pipes brought in from a nearby coffee plantation. Different kinds of human interference with wild beasts, but now comes an even bigger shock.
A 450-volt electric fence. 12-foot ditch. Well, what did you think kept the animals in the park? Occasionally they've learned that it's safe here, safe from poachers and such like. But they're also physically restrained. So, how big does an enclosure have to be before you stop calling it a cage?
Many miles away, another source of confusion, Mazuma Springs in Tsavo National Park. 50 million gallons of crystal water gush out of the lava every day, much of it destined for the city of Mombasa on the coast. Meanwhile, the pools of Mazuma are an oasis for wildlife, especially hippos. That's nothing special, though. What is special about Mazuma is that there's a purpose-built viewing hut. It was built to let you see hippos in their element, underwater, which it would do if there were any hippos nearby. Mostly it's just fish, barbels. They may be fun to watch, but they aren't a patch on hippos. Unfortunately, the hippos seem to prefer the other end of the pool. All the hut's good for is resting your telephoto lens on. At the risk of being boring then, is Mazuma the wild, or is it a zoo? Salt Lick Lodge is a 3-hour spine-jarring drive from Mazuma. The idea is to spy, in luxurious comfort, on the animals that come to drink from the specially constructed waterhole, planned to provide an unparalleled picture. Salt Lick has an extra wheeze that sets it apart from the other lodges. An underground chamber that gives you a mud-in-the-eye view of the teeming herds. Trouble is, on the day I visited, they weren't exactly teeming. In fact, the man-made waterhole, filled with clear water from a dam on the nearby Bura River, was downright desolate. Heavy rains have created an additional mud bath, which the animals prefer to patronize. It just goes to show, you can plan all you want for the wild, but in the end, the animals are free to vote with their feet. In they all come for a drink and a wallow, with no one to watch them except us. It isn't like this all the time, but often enough to be a bit of a disappointment for some visitors to the lodge. Back on the veranda overlooking the proper waterhole, there's almost nothing to see, just a solitary sacred ibis. Sometimes life just doesn't match up to expectations built on edited highlights. Many of the tourist attractions on the popular safari circuit are like that, not quite what they seem. This is Governor's Camp on the Mara River, supposedly an echo of the white hunter's rough life in the bush under canvas. But the canvas covers private bathrooms with flushing loos and hot and cold running water. The philosophy is to bring comfort to the bush rather than wilderness to the city, and the food is something to wonder at. Like most of the visitors, the provisions come in each day by plane from Nairobi and the coast. Life at Governor's, far from being rough and tough, is a luxurious indulgence from start to finish. And after a rest to digest lunch, a little game. Not tennis, but wild game. The start of a game drive, part of the safari experience. It isn't hard to find the great herds of buffalo that stretch from sky to sky in the Mara, and the tourists are completely taken with the spectacle of big game, on the hoof and in the open, even though the park authorities are worried about the sheer number of buffalo. Zebras and Thompson's gazelle graze quietly together in a mixed herd so typical of the East African grasslands. A crowned crane attends to its toilet. But is this what we came all this way to see? Don't we want blood, nature red in tooth and claw? A quiet little chat between the drivers establishes the whereabouts of the butchers of the plain. We're off on the trail of a cheetah. This one looks straight from central casting. Go out there and play a noble cheetah, and all the lenses are on it. Nor is it alone. Down below there's a cub, polishing off the latest kill. At last, genuine red-blooded nature, enough to bring the vultures flocking. It's a wonder they ever do kill anything with all the tourists around, and scientists have revealed that tourists do indeed interfere and make it harder for cheetah to hunt successfully. Our very presence changes the rules of the survival game. But these seem to be managing all right, at least for now. But despite being wild and free, in all the vast space of the Mara, they're hardly ever alone. And so, on to the other much-sought killers. We just missed the actual kill, and out in the wild there are no action replays, but there's still enough action left for us to feast on. The average game drive is carefully orchestrated, the tourists quietly manipulated to make it more exciting, more like a hunt. The lions usually come last as a proper climax. Now, I don't think there's anything much wrong with that. It's part and parcel of the show. But all those vehicles cutting into the soft soil are destroying the very grassland they came to see. At Amboseli, in the shadow of Kilimanjaro, the destruction got so bad something had to be done. As one condition for a $6 million loan to develop the park, the World Bank insisted that Amboseli keep cars on the right tracks, with ditches if necessary. It works to an extent, and there are on-the-spot fines for violators.